Hello everyone, it's Infinity Gamer here, and if you've been seeing my recent videos you would have noticed that I had a pretty stressful time around my tournament. But the good news is I've managed to get some rest and relaxation thanks to getting my hands on the latest copy of Betrayal. Now this is Corvus Belli's latest manga. Obviously they had Outrage beforehand, which I have had the pleasure of reading, and now that I've got my hands on this, I'm going to make a confession. This was the first ever manga that I'd read. I actually watched Betrayal after this, so I didn't really know what to expect. Yeah, I thought I'd kind of missed the boat in terms of getting into manga and all that sort of stuff, but was very excited that Corvus Belli have given me the opportunity to read this, check it out, and understand the story. As you also know, I'm a huge fan of the Human Sphere lore. I've done a lore video, which I will link up to at the very top of that, which came from the N3 rulebook. Now, you can get Kodali and friends, which are from this Betrayal comic, and the characters are actually featured in here, so if you love the book and you want to immerse yourself even more fully into the Kodali story and the Human Sphere, you can get that Betrayal expansion set, which has 4 miniatures in it, which are all characters that feature in this Betrayal novel. So let's get on the inside of this. You'll notice that it's very premium quality. It's a very thick book. If you got Outrage, you might not see anything majorly different because the book comes in its own sleeve and then the special edition miniature comes kind of in a hidden pocket up here at the top. And that's the Kodali miniature. I'm actually pretty nervous about painting this one up because I've seen quite a few people who have done their Kodali and they've made it look stunning. I'll pop a couple up the side here so that you can see what I'm on about and maybe understand my nervousness about tackling this model because I want to do it justice and I want to make it look as close to these guys as I can. So it's definitely one that's going to stay on the shelf for a little while, probably after my Star Martyr set is finished being painted, but I am looking forward to getting into this. I do have Combined Army as my second army because I picked up Operation Wildfire and Beyond Wildfire, so Kodali is going to be a nice addition to that as well. The book itself, pretty thick, like a bit thicker than I expected. I love the matte finish and obviously the artwork on the cover is stunning. I love the artwork, and this is going to be a common thing because you'll notice me bring it up a couple of times as we flick through the book. There's a lot to it. I did expect, I think Outrage was a bit smaller than this. This one's definitely a lot taller and a bit wider. And I don't know why, but I just kind of thought big thick book, it's going to take me ages to get through this. I'll space this out over a couple of days, where obviously because it's pictures and some of them are full page pictures, it doesn't take that long to get through. Really nice read, really relaxing, really enjoyable to get into. And again, with artwork as good as this, how can you really complain? One of the things I did appreciate though is previously I did a video on my 5 theories on what had happened to Kodali, more because I was curious that Corvus Belli were launching this manga that focused on the Kodali story. I kind of thought that her story had been wrapped up and pretty well defined. I think we all thought that she'd been sepsitarized or something similar. And so why bring out a manga that explains her story when we know what it is? So I had 5 theories that kind of went, well, if that's not what happened, what are the 5 potential other things that could have happened? I was incredibly chuffed that one of the theories that I had was true. Now, when you throw 5 out there, you do stand a good chance of one of them actually sticking, but I was very glad that not only did one of my 5 get chosen, but actually 3 out of them also get kind of explored in good detail within the story. I'm trying so hard to give you a sense as to how good this is without giving away any of the plot, which is incredibly difficult, but I'm going to do my best because if you are looking to buy this because you're interested in any of the whether it's a Kodali background or whether you're interested in the Human Sphere, how the world works and what Corvus Belli are imagining outside of the gameplay, this is definitely a great purchase. I can say that, absolute hand on heart, no bias at all. This is a fantastic book for the story of Kodali, Yu Jing, the Human Sphere, the Combined Army, all of that sort of stuff. So let's dive in. What do you get on the inside? Now you probably would have seen some of the artwork highlights as Corvus Belli started to tease Betrayal, but without giving away any of the storyline, you can see the artwork is phenomenal. Like, it's really good. Now if you did read Outrage, you may have found Outrage to be maybe more archetypal anime, which is obviously what Corvus Belli has been known for. The Betrayal marks a bit of a departure from that in terms of, I think Corvus Belli are moving into more of a mainstream artwork, style, story, and that is not a criticism. It makes it more accessible and less intimidating for people who maybe don't want to go into that anime world and that manga world. It reads like a fantastic comic book. It's just, I mean, the artwork is stunning. The world building in it is exceptional. You will not be disappointed if you're reading this to try and go, well, what do people do between fighting, on Paradiso or something like that? What's the intrigue? What's the politics? What's the diplomacy? What do the vehicles look like? What does the world look like? The terrain? What's the clothing? What's the equipment? All of that is beautifully covered here. And I love it for that alone. And then you've got a fantastically captivating story that runs through the heart of this book. With Outrage, I felt that story was maybe a bit cliched in some areas. It was, again, don't want to spoil that if you haven't read it, but if you've read Outrage or seen Outrage and you've just gone, that was a bit of a disappointment, I don't want to commit to another manga from Corvus Belli, completely dispel that from your mind. This is leaps and bounds, a huge, huge improvement on Outrage and the story and the world building. And again, that sounds like a criticism of Outrage. It's not. It serves. Some people would love that sort of story. I think back when it came out, which wasn't even that long ago, it was fine. The world has changed. N4 has changed everything. Corvus Belli has changed everything. The new models that Corvus Belli are bringing out are leaps and bounds ahead of everything else. This kind of brings everything in line with how Corvus Belli is growing as a company. Now, I want to show you some artwork. I don't want to spoil the story for you, so I'm just going to jump to one of the fight scenes that's in this to just give you an idea as to how exceptional this artwork is. So here you've got Kodali being Kodali. Now, this is actually back when she was a Yujing officer. You can see we're not very far into the book here at all, so I'm not spoiling anything major. This is what we know to be Kodali's backstory, is that she was a Yujing tiger soldier. She was kind of a specialist operative, and she obviously was at the front line, and this is basically giving you her backstory just in case you don't know. So it's bringing you up to speed with where she was before she became part of the combined army in some way, which obviously this book reveals all as to why she's on that side of the fence. Really got to watch my words here. So yeah, but again, the artwork is here, and you can see detail after detail after detail kind of unravels. So you see just beyond the boom thwack kapow that you're maybe expecting from a comic book of some sort, you've just got layers and layers. The depth in this artwork is beautiful. Every frame pulls you in. Don't just skim this book, or if you do, skim it the first time so that you get a sense of the storyline and you stay with the pace, stay with the momentum that this story very nicely builds and never really departs. Come back, look at the artwork in more detail. There are layers here that you do not appreciate the first time that you skim through this. Just hats off for the artwork. And what's great is that there's artwork that matches the story. So there is intrigue, there's suspense, there is, who's on whose side. There are characters and trickery. There's, again, how do I say so much without saying anything at all? That's the real tricky thing about doing a review of something like this. So I'm letting the pictures speak for themselves a little bit here. So if you were a parent who read Outrage, you may not have gone, I want to pass that to my kid, necessarily. There may have been words in there used, there may have been images that you would have found maybe suggestive. Not so here. So yes, there's violence, there's blood, but it's, again, I don't think it's quite as gratuitous as it was in Outrage. There's a little bit of swearing, but there's nothing really. I think there's maybe one word, if that. So it's used very sparingly, as opposed to gratuitously. And there's, apart from kind of what you're seeing there, there's no even suggested nudity really. So it's like what you're seeing there is what you're getting. Like, this is the grittiness of it. This is, I suppose, the rawness of this. If you're looking at this page and you're going, there's nothing majorly terrible there, that's the rest of the book. So you could probably give this to a teenager, younger kids, and not worry too much about it, and that would be a great introduction to the human sphere and the world of Corvus Belli. Obviously, as a sensible parent, you won't take the word of a YouTube person for this. You'll read it yourself first and you'll check. But I, to be honest, as you'll probably know from my channel, I don't like really extreme stuff, whether it's violence, whether it's anything else like that. So this, to me, was perfect for me. It was, I suppose, more, it was, I almost said more intelligent there, and that would have been a terrible thing to have said, and a terrible thing to have kept in this edit. It's not intelligent, it's smart. The story carries itself, the intrigue, the writing, the artwork. It doesn't try and compensate from a lack of story by throwing in other ways to titillate and entertain. It relies on a strong story carrying it all the way through. That is one of the biggest compliments I can give any tale, any story, anything written down, and this does it in bucket loads. It is gripping, it's thrilling, it's engaging. I think I've used all of those at least once before to describe this book, but you're getting a sense as to what I mean here. It's brilliant. I know I don't necessarily know much about Yu Jing. I don't know as much about the human sphere as lots of other people. Doesn't matter. This story is fantastic. There are one or two instances where they assume you know stuff and they assume you're playing Infinity. You could not necessarily pick this up if you don't know a lick about the human sphere and you've never seen the armies or you've never seen a game being played and kind of go, oh yeah, I know where they're heading with that. But maybe that's just me. Maybe that's my experience colouring my judgment. Maybe you can. But I enjoyed it and I don't know lots. I know enough to know that it's a game I enjoy. But I play O12 mostly and then a bit of Shazvasti Combined Army. But the Combined Army, they're the dirty alien scum. So I don't necessarily care about them as much. But what I like here is Yu Jing are explained very well. More so than, again, I think Outrage gave us maybe a little bit of a glimpse into nomads, but because they don't really fit into society hugely, you don't get a sense as to how the rest of the human sphere operates, in my mind. Obviously, there's a Pano element in the Outrage story, but that doesn't really go very far. You do get the expectation that you're on the fringe of the human sphere, and maybe that was intentional, so that they don't go into too much of the intricacies of the bigger society. This does not shy away from that. If anything, it kind of sits right at the center. You understand the Yu Jing culture slightly better. You understand the betrayal that they may have felt by seeing Kodali then fight against them for the combined army, regardless of the circumstances that she may have ended up down that path. And then you get a sense on the combined army side that there's maybe more depth there than simply bloodthirsty aliens looking to slay anything that's human. There's, their own internal politics and infighting and, again, depth and, their own world kind of gets a layer pulled back, potentially. So, and you also get a sense of the fear that it might be like having the combined army in your world, which Outrage doesn't touch upon at all. The combined army don't feature at all in Outrage. Whereas here, it's obviously front and centre because you've got the story of Kodali, which is inextricably linked to the combined army. I love this book. I really do. I've already lent it to someone else so that they can have a read of it. And I have yet to catch up on their thoughts on it, but I was hook, line and sinker in love with the characters that were in this book. There were maybe one or two plot holes, but they are more than made up for by the fact that there's then excellent elements to the story that kind of carry it through. I love it. Highly recommend it if you have been on the fence about getting Betrayal, because it was a manga and you don't usually read or look at mangas. Do you really read a manga? Oh, anyway, semantics. If you were on the fence because mangas aren't typically your thing and you were worried that that's kind of like going to be very anime or it's, I don't know, going to be a bit childish or kiddie, don't worry about that at all. This is a really, really good insight into the human sphere, the world as a whole, the Kodali story, Yu Jing a little bit, and pretty much the human sphere as a whole. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. I really do think that even if you don't get the limited edition version, because you don't need the Kodali model, or even if you sell the Kodali model because you do have the limited edition and you just get the book, it's brilliant. It is brilliant, and it's nice to have a book for once, especially from a company that typically shies away from pushing published literature. Although we know that that's not going to be the case anymore, because they have partnered to have at least 2 novels come out with, I think, and apologies again if I'm doing this off the top of my head, but I think it's something like Flying Hussars or something. It's a really cool name, but I can't remember whether it's Flying or something even cooler than that. But Hussars is excellent, and anything with Hussars in the name is going to be brilliant. So they've got 2 novels in the works with them, They've obviously got a couple of other mangas in the works, I imagine, after the success of Betrayal. This is a brilliant, brilliant manga. I am definitely going to be picking up any other fiction or literature that comes out of Corvus Belli because this is brilliant. And if this is an indication as to where they're going, we're really in for an exciting time from Corvus Belli. They've done a fantastic job. Get a copy. Obviously, follow me on Instagram if you want to see painting updates, if you want to see if I eventually get to this Kodali miniature and assemble it, paint it, you'll see on Instagram, because that's where a lot of my miniature painting goes. I'm not looking forward to doing those wings. The blending I'm going to have to try and achieve with that is going to be insane. I might try some OSL. That's not a great idea, but I want this to be an awesome representation of my work. So yeah, follow me on Instagram if you want to see my painting successes and failures. Obviously, like and subscribe to see more channel updates. Get yourself a copy of Betrayal. Thank you very much for following. I will be catching up with you soon.